In a rather emotional press briefing yesterday, the NTSB was able to verify that the collision between the CRJ jet and the UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter occurred at 325 feet, plus or minus 25 feet. And that collision occurred right here in the middle of the Potomac River on short final to runway 33 at Washington's Reagan National Airport. It's Monday, the 3rd of February. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the BLANCOLIRIO channel, and it's time for an update. As a reminder, to be clear, the NTSB, who investigates all these accidents and eventually determines the probable cause, can only make recommendations to the FAA as to how to change things to make things safer and prevent future accidents. And the frustration of the NTSB at the number of open items, over 1,000 open items, that the NTSB has proposed to the FAA as far as safety recommendations, these open items not being addressed by the FAA is terribly frustrating on behalf of the NTSB, and their frustration with this was palpable in this press briefing. But one thing is almost certain to even the most casual observer: relying on visual separation of aircraft this close with only 100 feet to spare. Remember, the maximum altitude of the Black Hawk helicopters on this Route 1, Route 4, as it comes abeam the airport, is only 200 feet, and the aircraft need to descend to nearly 300 feet right over the top of that route, is unacceptable. The practice needs to stop. You either need to move the route or remove the route, or have positive control of the helicopter traffic and prevent the helicopters from passing underneath the path of the airliners while they're coming in to land to Washington's Reagan National Airport. And that needs to happen now, and I believe it already has. The name, rank, and experience levels of the different UH-60 crew members has been released. Getting her check ride was Captain Rebecca Lobach with just over 450 hours of flying time. The instructor pilot with about 1,000 hours of flying time was Chief Warrant Officer 2, Andrew Lloyd Eves. The crew chief on board the flight was Staff Sergeant Ryan Austin O'Hara. So the crew chief is the extra set of eyes assisting the crew and the chief maintainer of the aircraft. Now about these flying times, 450 hours for an officer in the Army, 450 hours at this point in her career is about average, or is about normal. In the fixed-wing world, we tend to think of that as being very low time, but in the Army helicopter world, who has been doing the Army, who's been doing more with less for years, that is about average. And the instructor pilot with 1,000 hours as a chief warrant officer, that's about right too. Generally in the Army, the warrant officers are the guys that are doing the majority of the flying. At the NTSB press briefing, they were also able to nail down this timeline. They also confirmed that the tower was communicating simultaneously on VHF and UHF. UHF is what the Army helicopter uses, and they were able to verify that, in fact, only the tower could hear both frequencies. And, of course, it's kind of a one-way conversation with each of the aircraft, either on Victor or UHF. So, in other words, they confirmed that the helicopter could not hear the CRJ traffic, radio traffic, and the CRJ could not hear the helicopter on UHF. Only the tower could hear both. The NTSB's already downloaded the CVR and flight data recorder for the CRJ, and from the cockpit voice recorder, the NTSB was able to verify that the CRJ did get an automatic traffic warning just some 18 seconds prior to the collision while the aircraft was below 500 feet. And this is interesting and important because below 1,000 feet, the TCAS system inhibits resolution advisories, and I reported earlier that the TCAS generally mutes the aural warnings below 500 feet, yet they did get an aural automatic traffic warning below 500 feet, just some 18 seconds before the collision. The NTSB also verified that this particular helicopter flight was working with night vision goggles. They still have yet to determine if those goggles were on at the time of the collision. The NTSB also confirmed there were 5 people working the cab of the tower at the time of the accident. There was 1 local controller on the radios handling arrivals and departures. There was a ground controller. There was a local assist controller who would not be on the radios but assist the other controllers. There was a ops supervisor and there was an ops supervisor trainee, all in the cab at the time of the accident. They didn't address the initial reports here that are there not normally 2 controllers on the radio one handling the VHF radios and another one handling the UHF military traffic. Let's review the ATC audio once again, but as a matter of review, remember the Route 1 that the helicopter was flying on comes down to 300 feet at this location here, and then by the Memorial Bridge, the helicopters need to remain at or below 200 feet and remain at or below 200 feet as they go around the airport, and not until they get well south of the airport here at the Wilson Bridge are they allowed to climb up to or remain below an altitude of 300 feet. Now, this is the preliminary ADS-B data and timing of the ATC comms based on what Victor at VAS Aviation has put together, and he's got both the VHF and UHF frequencies. Here's Pat 25, the UH-60 helicopter, and the CRJ located right down here.
789, contact Stone Parks, good day.
Okay.
American 3130, slow the funnel.
Well, American 3130.
American 3130 is located behind the CRJ, Blue Streak 5342.
Pat 25, traffic just off the Wilson Bridge to CRJ at 1,200 feet, start from runway 33.
Scott has a traffic site request visual separation.
This separation proof. American 1630 tower.
So from all the way out here, visual separation is approved for Pat 25. He claims he already has the CRJ in sight, and this distance from right here at the tidal basin all the way down to the Wilson Bridge is over 6 miles. Let's check it out on Google Maps. So if Victor's animation is correct, the tidal basin located right about here, Lincoln Memorial right there, and the Wilson Bridge located down here is a distance of 6 miles. So with night vision goggles at night, can you see that distance of 6 miles? Does that helicopter actually see the CRJ, the correct CRJ, from that distance at night with NVGs? The CRJ is down at 200 feet, and the CRJ was up there at 1,200 feet, so he's looking up for the light of the CRJ. So the tower is telling Pat 25 that CRJ is setting up for runway 33. That should be a big clue light right there that it's going to be, you need to have the situational awareness to know that that's going to be a problem, because Pat 25 knows that the CRJ is going to come swinging right around here and crossing his path for runway 33 at about the same time that he's going to be there. Even though the frequencies are split, the control tower is telling him of this potential conflict ahead. Now, why is Blue Streak 5342 being asked by Tower to switch runways? Because of airport congestion there at DCA, the Tower wants to get another departure off of runway 1 real quick before the CRJ arrives.
200 feet, start from runway 33.
Scott has a traffic site request visual separation.
This separation proof. American 1630 tower, runway 1 lot void, traffic through start from runway 33, dispatch 16 mile funnel.
And that's the traffic he wants to get off on runway 1 by having the CRJ come around to runway 33, relieve the congestion at the airport.
Runway 1.
Whiskey 5307, keep rolling out to November, count 17 today. American 1630 to 1 star 320 at 14, Galaxy 5, traffic 2 mile low base, runway 33, no delay, runway 1 clear for immediate takeoff.
Number 1, clear for takeoff, American 1630.
You can see just how tight this airspace is and how busy these controllers are, and how beneficial it would be to have that second controller running the helicopter frequency. But that still has yet to be verified by the NTSB.
Pat 25, get the CRJ in sight. Pat 25, pass behind the CRJ.
Pat 25 has a aircraft in sight, press visual separation.
This separation.
So just within some 16 or so seconds of the collision, once again, Pat 25 confirms that he still has the CRJ in sight, requesting visual separation. They're just saying this automatically, request visual separation, have him in sight, as if it's a normalization of deviance. It's like this is the way they've been doing it all the time, and he's convinced that he's got the correct aircraft in sight, when in fact he does not.
American 4782 by Batten number and visual.
American 472 Washington, 1 star 32017.
Another thing that needs to be verified is exactly which model of Black Hawk were these guys flying at the time of the accident. It's more likely than not that they were flying one of these old UH-60 Lima models, the L models, steam-powered gauges, no autopilot, without all the flat screen technology of the later Victor models, or I believe even Mike models. So Rebecca would have been flying from the right seat here, getting her check ride. There's her altimeter right there, artificial horizon and airspeed indicator right there. And Andrew, the instructor pilot, would be here in the left seat. And I believe the crew chief would kind of be in between the two pilots, maybe kind of favoring over here on the right side as Rebecca was taking her check ride. Again, looking outside, helping with see and avoid. But everybody, if one crew member's on NVGs, all the crew members would be on NVGs. And of course, as we discussed earlier, the NVGs have a tendency to limit your peripheral vision and limit your ability at depth perception. And even if they were using the late model Dash 9 white phosphor goggles, they still need to look down below the goggles here to the instrument panel to verify their altitude. It's not likely that they had any kind of heads-up display in those goggles showing them their altitude. Here's the flat panel screen displays on the later model, Victor model UH-60 helicopters that are available to the VIP transport squadrons. And regardless of which model they are flying, you're still going to have the limitations of see and avoid. And NTSB will bring this out in detailed animation as to the blind spots of the helicopter, mainly these pillars here, 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 and here, plus the fact that a helicopter, as it flies along, it's got to tip nose down a bit, limiting visibility out of the top of the helicopter. So as I mentioned earlier, the NTSB released the data of 325 feet, the altitude data from the CRJ, but they have not yet clarified the altimetry from the helicopter nor from the radar returns from the tower. By the way, the cockpit voice recorder and data recorder have been recovered from the Black Hawk helicopter. They had some water damage. They're drying out in the ovens now before they can analyze that data. Part of this analysis is going to be to determine what was the altimeter setting at the time of the accident and how does that information passed on to the helicopter pilots. Do they pick it up on the ATIS recording or do they get it from the controller prior to entering into the airspace? Because on the ATC audio that I've listened to so far, leading up to the collision, I have not heard anybody mention what the altimeter setting is. And the altimeter setting is critical because you set it right here in your altimeter, and it makes sure that everybody is on the same sheet of music. Let's go out to the hangar and show you in the Husky what I mean by this. Altimeters here in the States are set to QNH, or the home altimeter setting, a setting which will give you the elevation of the airport above mean sea level. The altimeter setting is given in inches of mercury and it's set here in the Colesman window. So here at Nevada County, we're at an elevation of 3,150 feet, giving a altimeter setting of about 2,994 inches of mercury. So the current altimeter setting would be 2,994. If you set in 2,984, you would be about 100 foot off on your altitude. So every tenth of an inch of mercury that you're off in your altimeter setting, you are introducing an altimeter error of 100 feet. And that's why setting your local altimeter setting correctly is so important on these approaches. And that altimeter setting is listed on the ATIS and usually given by the tower as well. So from over 6 miles away, over a minute prior to the mid-air collision, Pat 25 claims that he has, the instructor pilot has Blue streak 5342 in sight. And again, just 16 seconds prior to the collision, after the tower controller gets a collision advisory on his screen, Pat 25 reaffirms that he still has the CRJ in sight and that he will be passing behind him when he clearly doesn't. So in obvious hindsight now, when you have a situation like this, when a jet is going to transition to runway 33 and you've got a helicopter coming down from the north, it's time to stop that helicopter and have him hold here at Haines Point and not allow him to proceed south of Haines Point until the landing traffic has landed on runway 33. Thank you so much for your support of this channel, especially the folks over on Patreon that make this content possible. See you here.